This tutorial, it's going to show you how to work on a demo calculation that will allow you to have a start date and an end date and allow you to find the weekdays between these two dates value. And through the process, we are also going to be learning one of FileMaker's most useful function, which is going to be the while function. Hey, what is up everybody? Welcome to another FileMaker beginner tutorial. My name is Sunny Chu, and today we're going to work on this find workdays between two date value. So what I have in this sample file is that we have a start date, which is the 3rd of September 2020. And we also have the end date here, which is the 17th of September 2020. Now, if you take a look here, there are 10 working days in between them. So like 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 14, 15, 16, and we're not counting the end date, which is the 17th. So we have like 10 weekdays between these two days. So basically, we're trying to exclude the Saturdays and Sunday in here. Now, what I want to do in this tutorial is that not only are we going to make this very simple feature of trying to find the workdays, we are also going to be learning one of the more interesting new kind of like calculation function within FileMaker, which is called while. And there's a wide range of things that you can do with this new function. And to be honest, I'm very happy as a developer because before FileMaker 18, I have to use some really crazy calculation function to do similar things. And now, since FileMaker 18, this makes it super easy. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Now, this tutorial, I am going to kind of like break it down into a few parts. And basically, I'm going to break it down to 3 parts here. So number 1, I'm just going to show you a very simple example of how the while function works. And this example, it's going to be kind of useless, but it's just to get you familiar with the whole function and how it works. And then I am going to make like a more functional example. It's still very abstract, it's not super useful, but it gives you a little bit more idea of what it can do. And then after we gone through these 2 examples, we are then going to use the while function to try to get our workdays calculation that we are set up to do in this tutorial. So let's get started. Now, let me just quickly close this file, and I am going to open the before file of this tutorial. So if I open up the before file, this is what I have in here. And inside this file, I haven't set up the weekdays calculation yet. So if I go to File, Manage Database, it's just a very simple one table database with start date, end date, and a work days for as a calculation field that we haven't set anything in here just yet. And this is what we're going to work on. Now, to explain to you what the while function does, and what I want to do is to just start with using scripts because it's a little bit easier for me to explain that way. So I'm just going to quickly set a variable that is called result, and then I'm just going to shout out the result here so that we can kind of see what is happening. And inside this result variable, this is where I'm going to use start to explain to you what the while function does. So right here, let's type in while in here, click enter, and you will notice that we have 4 variables in here, and it's looking very complex, very confusing if this is the first time that you are looking into this function. So this is the first parameter, this is the second parameter, this is the third parameter, and this is the 4th parameter. Now I just want to take some very quick moment to kind of like reorganize them, so we have an easier time just looking into each of them one by one, like here. So now I break them down into like their own individual lines. Now there's one very important thing that I want you to notice is that like for the first parameter and the 3rd parameter, we have like a rectangular brackets in here. And I'm going to explain a little bit more what it means, but right now just remember that such thing exists. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to type in like 2 dash in here. That means this is a command line and it's not going to be executed within the calculation. So it's kind of like the scripting where you have comment inside your script. And I'm just going to like save this original thing on the top here. All right, let's just do this. It's easier. So I'm just like removing these like default text from the calculation, and I'm gonna work through something very simple. So I'm gonna like start by creating a very simple example, and I just want to show you the example first, and then I'm gonna explain to you what it does, because this function, it's kind of complex to just like talk about it without any example. So the first parameter we have in here is to get the initial variable. Now I'm gonna just set a quick variable here that's called I, and I is gonna be equals to 1. And that's the first variable being set. And the second variable I need to set is to set the condition. And I'm just gonna quickly set if I is lower than 12, then this condition is met. Now, once this condition is met, we want to do some logic to it. So what we are going to do is maybe like I equals I plus 1. And then in here, once everything is done, I'm going to return the result as I in here. Now, this example, it's going to be really useless, but it's kind of just a starting point for us to show you exactly how this while function works. So let's click OK, and click OK. I'm quickly going to save this script, and I'm going to click play. And I'm guessing that you already know what the answer is going to be, the result here. It should be quite obvious. Now, if I click play, you will notice that it's shouting out 12 as the result. And it shouldn't like take a lot of guesswork to find out why, because we have set the condition 12 in here, and it has to something to do with this, right? So basically, what was happening just now is that we kind of created a loop for calculation. So there's a certain calculation that runs 12 times that gave us the 12 result just now. Now what I mean is that inside this first parameter here, we have declared a variable and we name it I, and I started with number 1. And then we kind of have a condition here to say that if the value of I is lower than 12, then we are going to run this logic here. So every time I is smaller than 12, we do I equals I plus 1. That means that we are adding 1 to the value I. So next time it becomes 2. And then once it's 2, it goes back to this condition again, and it checks again. Since I is 2, it's still smaller than 12. It's going to plus 1 again. And we keep that kind of cycle going a few times until I is no longer smaller than 12 when it becomes 12, after adding like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then all the way to 12. Then this condition is no longer true, then it stops at 12. Now, this is the basics of the while loop. Now, the first part here is that if I want to write a little bit more comment here, the initial variable is that this is the starting point. I started with 1. And then the condition, it's kind of like a gatekeeper to make sure that it's to decide when it stops, because in this case, when I is smaller than 12, it will keep running. So that means when I is equal to or bigger than 12, then it stops. So it's kind of like this is kind of like a setting the stopping point of this whole loop. And then we have the logic here, which is kind of like the action. So the action here is just adding 1 to the I every single time. And we are going to stop when I reaches 12. And this is the final result that we are going to give back after running through this whole function. And we're just going to give back the value I in here. So that's the idea behind this first example. And moving on, what we're going to do is we are going to move on to the second example, which is a more functional example that actually does something a little bit more interesting. So let me maybe duplicate the script. Let's call it quick test 2. Well, let's call it functional example. And the first one, let's call it simple example. Kind of like this. And inside this functional example, what we want to do is we want to click back into the calculation, and since we duplicate this, we have everything we did just now in this calculation. So what I want to do is I want you to look at this rectangular bracket here. What does it mean? Now, it doesn't have a rectangular bracket for condition, and it doesn't have a rectangular brackets for result. So what's interesting about this rectangular bracket is that it means you can add in multiple value inside this parameter. So what I can do is I can not only can I add I equals 1, I can do a equals hello, like this. Now, of course, I need to do it in the proper syntax. So I need to bracket on the start, and then bracket on the end, and then between the first variable and the second variable, I want to add a semicolon here to indicate to the computer that these are two variables. And so now I have my first parameter as a packaged within this bracket, and the first value is I equals 1, and the second value equals to a equals hello. And what I want to do next is I just want to quickly change the result here, and instead of just showing the I as the result, I want to just do a in here. I want to show a as the result, so it's going to show hello. Now if I click OK, and then run this, it's just going to say hello. But what happens in the back end is that this condition and this logic still runs. So it runs through the logic 12 times. But since we are not changing anything about a inside the logic, it doesn't show up making any change in the result. So this is what we're going to do. So I'm going to add a second line of logic in here. And again, you can see we have a bracket for the logic. So we can kind of do a bracket, and I can set another logic here. That's going to say, let's do a second line of logic. So this is the first logic, I equals I plus 1. And then I can probably do something like a equals a and I, something like that, and maybe a space bar. So I'm doing a and then I and then adding a space bar here. Now let's see what the result is going to be. Click OK again, save this, and when I click play, you will notice that we have hello 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you can kind of see there's a history here that we had 2 and then a space bar and then a 3 and then a space bar. So these numbers are the history of how the I evolve. So every time this logic runs, I plus 1, and then a added the I number and also a space bar in it. That's why we see the result that we have just now. But one thing that you might notice that's a little bit strange in here is that you will notice that it starts from number 2 and go all the way to 12 here. So something is not quite right in here, and I'm going to explain why. Now, the reason why, initially we set I as number 1, but how come the first instance of this whole logic is hello 2? And the reason being is that there is a sequence to the logic. So I used to be number 1, and then it runs through this condition, and then it goes into this logic, and now I is number 2, and then we added a number 2 to hello. So that's why the first the first instance is going to be called hello 2. So what we want to do to make it look a little bit better is just to switch the position of these two logic like this, and we should have something good to go. So click OK, play that, and we have hello 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all the way to 11. Now the reason this is 11 because we want the I to be smaller than 12. So when it gets to 12, it doesn't really when it gets to 12, this condition is no longer met, because when I is 12, 12 is not bigger than 12. So this logic does not run. So as a result, it doesn't show up. So that is the second example that I want to show you with a little bit more added complexity to this whole thing. Now what I want to do now is I want to show you the final thing that we're trying to do in here, which is to count all the work days between the two date value in here. And what I'm going to do again is I'm just going to copy these two script steps and I'm going to place it in here. And so I want to sort out the idea behind this whole this feature to you. Is that what I want to do is I want to use a while loop. Let's say today is the 3rd of September, I want to like kind of use the while to go through each of the day. Go through like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, all the way until 22nd of September, and check if each day is like a Saturday or a Sunday. And then I want to like kind of count how many days are not Sunday and Saturday, so that I got the final result as like the working days. So we're going to do that step by step, and let's quickly open this variable again. Now, what we want to do is we want to set the starting point of this whole thing. So I want to probably set like a few things. So I'm going to set something maybe like a end date in here. So end date is going to be equals to this end date field, whatever date is on this date here. And then I want to do something like kind of like a check this date. So the first date I want to check is the 3rd of September, which is the start date. And then the next day that I want to check is the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, so on and so forth. So since this is the starting point, I want to set the check this date as like a start date in here. So now I have set up the end date and the start date. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to set the condition. So what I want to do is I want to check each date here from the start date all the way to the end date. So if the check this date has reached the point where it's equals to 22, which is the end date here, I'm going to stop. So I am going to do like a check this date is bigger than the end date. Then I'm going to stop this whole action here. And what I want to do here is inside the logic, I want to do two things. So every time I run through this logic, I want to +1 to the check this date, so that I can like check 3, check 4, check 5, and check 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, so on and so forth. So in a way, this is kind of like I equals I plus 1. So I'm going to do like check this date equals to check this date +1, kind of like this. And this is the idea. And let me just quickly remove this original A line in here. And so the final result I want to do is I want to, well, give back like a kind of like a counter of how many days are between these two dates, like the starting date and the end date. So I will need to probably set up another like counter variables. So I want to set the counter here just to count how many work days. And I want the starting point is going to be 0 because, well, when we first start counting, we start from 0, right? And then now what I want to do here is I want to, well, every time we run through this logic, we do like counter equals counter +1. Now this doesn't make any sense to the final outcome because every time we go through a new date, it's going to add 1 to the counter, and that's not what we want. We want to make it exclude the Saturday and the Sunday. But we're just going to work through this step by step so you have a better understanding of what is happening. So in here, the final result, I'm going to put the counter as the final result here. So whatever count I have, I'm going to show the final result in here. Click OK, click OK, and I just want to quickly run through this script so you know what's happening. So right now I am setting the start date as 3, the end date as 22, and if I click the script right now, it's going to say 0, and that's not quite right, and I didn't plan this. So let's see what's happening here. Oh, okay, so I have set the condition wrong. So in here, I have set that when check this date is bigger than the end date. So 3 is not bigger than 22. So right off the bat, this logic just doesn't run. So I actually need to reverse this. So if the end date is here and the current date I'm checking is smaller than the end date, I'm going to keep moving forward. So I need to like reverse this part right here. Click OK, click OK, and let's run that again and hope that works. And let's click this, and we have 19. So 22 minus 3 equals to 19, and it kind of makes sense. It looks right. So we have the basis down. Now that we know that this whole script or this calculation, it's able to run through these dates one by one. I think the last thing that I want to do is to add the logic in here to make it a little bit more complex. Right now, this is not working the way that we want because the counter is going to +1 no matter what the date it is. But how do we know a certain date is a Saturday or Sunday? And I think this is the part where I want to show you another function that is called day of week. Now this day of week function, it's pretty simple. We basically just place in a date value into it. And if it's like a Sunday, it's going to show 1, Monday 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and on Saturday it's 7. So what we want to do is we want to place in the checking date, like the date that we are checking, into this date of week function. And if it's like a Sunday or a Saturday, then we are not going to add to the counter. So let's just quickly try this, and now I'm going to be updating this counter logic. So counter, I am going to do an if function here. So I'm just gonna quickly like maybe not on this line. I'm gonna use another line here, just to kind of demonstrate the logic, and then I'm gonna place it back into here after we're done. So if, and I'm just gonna write in like a human word what it means, and then we're gonna convert it into syntax. So if the date, the check this date is Sunday or Saturday, then the counter remains unchanged. And if it's not Sunday or not Saturday, that means it's a weekday, then counter will be +1. It's kind of like this. So if the date that we check is Sunday or Saturday, the counter doesn't change. If it's like not a Sunday or Saturday, it's +1. So I'm just going to quickly write in here to not change anything. We just place in the counter here. Counter equals to counter, so no change are made. Now the tricky part is probably this part here. It's not that tricky. Well, if you're learning the while function, this is probably not tricky for you. But if day of week, and then we're going to place this check this date here into here. If day of week is equals to a Sunday, which is a 1, because as I said just now, day of week, if it's 1, then it's Sunday. And also, if day of week or is equals to 7, so if it's like a Sunday or if it's like a Saturday, then the counter doesn't change. Otherwise, the counter will be +1 in here. So that's the calculation. And I'm just going to quickly copy that, go up, and I'm going to paste it here. And let's hope that I haven't write any of the syntax wrong and it's letting me go through with this calculation. Okay, that looks good. So now we have this script completed, and it's time for us to test if this whole thing worked or not. So let me just quickly go here, and this is the 3rd of September. Let's try another date, maybe like a 15. Now, if this works, then we should have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 working days before the 15. So we are not counting the end date. That's how I set up the formula. So if I just click this now, we have like 8 days in here. So I think we have got it right. We are able to get the weekdays and between these two dates. And that is the whole idea behind this thing. Now, this technique here is you probably don't need to use the while function to do this. There's plenty of other ways that you can find out the weekdays. But I think this would be a really cool example of how you can apply this into a situation where you want to kind of loop inside the calculation to find certain things. Now in the future, if you want to, you can do something a little bit more complex. For example, right now we are only checking the business day by excluding Saturday and Sunday. But maybe there's a case in the future where you want to also take into account the holidays as well, the public holidays. And you can also do these things using similar concept that I teach here using the while loop, but maybe a little bit more complex, maybe a while loop within another while loop. But I'm not going to go into too much detail about that part. Otherwise, this tutorial is going to be like 15 minutes long. And if you want to see this feature being added to this demo file here, just let me know in the comments down below, and if there's enough people, I'm going to make that public holiday feature with another video. So that's basically it for this tutorial. And if you want to learn more about FileMaker and learn about like practical techniques that you can apply to business, just like this one here with a calculation that you can use to find the business day, you can go into my website, www.fmbeginner.com, to check out some of my courses where I guide you step by step into learning FileMaker as a beginner. And that's it for this tutorial. Hope you enjoy, and I will see you in the next one.